Listen to me. I've got you. I won't let go.
So a couple of the youngsters in my sphere asking me, because I'm much older than they are, what about this Titanic movie that's coming out? I mean, it's not strictly coming out, it's a re-release now in HDR 4K of the James Cameron Titanic movie. And they're asking me, like, what's it about? I say, I remember my parents playing that Celine Dion song over and over again. But is the movie any good? And of course you can watch it on Netflix, etc. So the issue is it worth going to see this new version? Is it worth going to the cinema, to the movie theatre to watch it? So first of all, is it any good? Well, it cost $200 million in the 90s, which was a lot of money. Special effects were just kind of, the computerized version we're just getting to standards that we would accept today, or we come to expect today. And was it a successful movie? $2.2 billion in revenue, yes. Commercial success, yes. Was it a critical success? Well, it had 14 Oscar nominations, won 11. Best Picture, Best Director, Sound, Editing, Special Effects, Costume, etc. And nothing for acting, note. Kate Winslet was nominated, I believe, but didn't win. And 4 Golden Globes. So yes, it was a spectacular success by all counts. So what's this new version? Well, HDR, 4K, is it worth seeing it? Let's see.
Is there anyone there?
Yes, what you see?
Iceberg, right ahead!
Thank you.
I rewatched it for this video. It's a good movie. You can see that it is epic, and it does. I mean, this is only small screen. I haven't been to see it on the big screen again, but I did see it originally. There's definitely a sense of scale, of grandeur. Even on the small screen now, though, there's elements of it in the original that still look a little bit fake, look a little bit contrived. And that for me is the main element, because the changes are the HDR and the 4K, not really changing the story. So that's something that could be worth seeing it on a big screen to see if it's improved. Now, the story itself, and the movie's very long, but as Martin East, who told me, who played Lookout Lee in the movie, he said the first cut was something like 20 hours long. So you can imagine how much they filmed. He said there are lots of scenes that were cut out, and eventually they ended up with this first draft of 20 hours and then had to work it down from there. Is it a good constructed movie in that basis? In my opinion, yeah, it holds together. One of the reasons it's so long is that they start the movie with what was then a present-day setting. The guys going down for the first time in the submersible exploration vehicles, submarines that were able to go down to that depth for the first time, including Cameron. He was one of the first guys to go down. And I think it said that he developed this interest in the underwater from working on previous movies like The Abyss. And he was the first person, I believe, to go down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. So he's very passionate about this underwater exploration and filming. And several of the guys in the movie, including the Swedish guy in the cabin, DiCaprio meets on the ship. He was a crew on the vessel that was deploying the submarines to go and do the filming of the Titanic wreck, the actual wreck. Several of the other guys were in this opening scene they had, which was present day then, 1991, looking at the wreck. And we have Kate Winslet's character, Rose, coming to the vessel to give them some history because they're looking for this gem. And it works, but it makes it long. I think the intention was to ground the movie in its time period, but connect the audience with that time period by showing somebody who is still alive, 100 years old. We don't have that now. I don't think there's any survivors left. Even a baby would be well over 100 years old now, 110 or something. So I don't think there's any living survivors left now. So I see the intention there, but it did make the movie very long. Now, my personal opinion, I watched the film in Johannesburg, and there was something wrong with the air conditioning in the movie theater, that it was stuck on full cold. I remember being there in just a t-shirt, and I was freezing cold. And accidentally or deliberately, they oversold the cinema tickets, or I think possibly it was showing in another theater in the same complex, and it broke. But for whatever reason, from about halfway through, after there was an interval because the film was so long, when we came back after the interval, there were a whole bunch more people in the cinema for some reason, and they were sitting on the steps between the seats, between the rows. But I remember that we were freezing cold, and sitting on the steps next to me for the second half was a young mother and a kid, and I could see her shivering. And this was the days before you got these luxurious cinemas with blankets and reclining chairs, etc. But I had to do the right thing, which was offer this lady with the kid my chair, and I sat on the step. So most of the second half of the movie I watched sitting on the step, freezing cold. And I can tell you that by the time I got to the point where Rose and Jack are hanging on to the door, Rose is on top. They've determined that it can't support the weight of both of them. It will tip over, so Leonardo DiCaprio's Jack is in the water. I was sitting there shivering, and I was thinking, push her off, man. I mean, she's a bitch. She's so selfish. She's spoiled. She's a brat. Just push her off. Let her drown. You survive. I wanted Jack to survive. So I was curious when I watched the movie the second time if I would feel the same or differently, especially with the time gap. I'm no longer a young man. And it was interesting because I realized that she did actually go back and save him because he was handcuffed in the brig, essentially, after being accused of trying to steal the jewel. And so she did save him. So that gave me some sympathy with her. But then I went through the story more, and she was away. She was in the lifeboat on her way, and she jumped back onto the boat. Now, I was thinking, if she'd gone away, she's on a lifeboat, that gives more chance for Jack maybe to find his way safely off the ship. And even if he ended up on the door, the same door, he could have survived. So I felt angry about that. I still felt resentful towards her character. When they bring her by helicopter to the vessel, they say she landed with about 20 bags. So I still see the same spoiled little girl, just grown old. And as a helicopter pilot myself, it's the cost per kilo of anything on a helicopter, and people bringing you excess baggage pushes you into a corner, performance corner. It makes the whole flight dangerous for everybody else. So either they laid on a special flight for her, which cost thousands of dollars, or they used up all the allowance for everybody else. So she's still selfish. Then when they showed pictures of her trying to say, look at this wonderful life that she led because she was bold, because she was inspired by Jack, we see her having presumably just flown an early vintage aircraft, other pictures. I didn't see anything about her opening an orphanage or being a school teacher or doing anything worthwhile. She had a daughter and children, so she formed some kind of family and went on from there. But I still got the feeling she's a selfish cow. And it was good casting by James Cameron, Kate Winslet in that sense, if that's what he wanted to convey. And initially, that's definitely what she was. But there were certain scenes when I thought Kate Winslet looked not very attractive and a little bit tired. From my perspective, I thought it was extremely noble of what Jack did, but would he really have fallen in love with this princess who's totally self-absorbed? And so I got to the end of the movie, and the second time I still, perhaps not quite as aggressively as the first time, but I still felt that Jack should survive and not Rose. And then when she chucked the jewel overboard at the end again, I was just like, oh. She could have sold it and given the money to charity, etc. It was a dramatic ending, but I feel like it was just consolidated what a selfish cow she was, and I still would rather that, I don't wish her to drown, but I still wish that Jack had survived instead. So that was my take on the film. And watching it the second time around, I still felt the same way. So I would say this: if you never watched the original, go watch this one in the movie theater, because it is spectacular. So it's an amazing creation. If you watched it before and you didn't like it, I wouldn't bother. If you watched it before yeah, like me, I would say, yeah, if I get the opportunity, I will go and watch it again because I want to see the advances in the technology. I want to see if they're making it even more spectacular. I mean, when the vessel sinks, and even before that, the scale of the scale of the vessel, which they did convey really well. One thing I thought was ironic about the movie is that it's been preserved in the American National Archive as an example of American history and something that must be conserved. It's one of the best-selling movies ever, and it's a British ship run by a British company. It just happened to be sailing to the US and had American people on board, but that's kind of been hijacked by a movie, although many of the characters are the actors and the characters are British.
Big boat, eh?
Daddy, it's a ship.
You're right.
Including some famous faces you'll see now, like look out for Mr. Fantastic in there.
Right! Listen to me, man. We have to go back.
And various other people who went on to even greater roles in the future after that movie. And the Celine Dion song. I remember from the first time around, we just got so sick of that damn song. It was just because of the airplay, I suppose, but you felt like you couldn't get away from it for about a year. But in the movie itself, it's not that intrusive, and I feared that I would be experiencing it going around and around in my head for weeks after I watched the movie again, but I didn't. Not that it isn't a great song, and it does stick with you, but it's not the nauseating experience that I remember from the first one. So look forward to that, enjoy it. It did win, that song won the Oscar as well.
To make each day count.